How do you differentiate that this review is, from somebody that you paid overseas to leave a review versus not?
Yeah. And how do we, it's all good and well. This is one of my core challenges of regulating the internet and the web anyway.
Welcome to ThoughtLave. This is our new experiment where we discuss tips, tricks, and hacks for audience builders, entrepreneurs, and people who just want to do shit, Aaron. So what do we have going on today? What kind of crazy thought waves do we have that we want to discuss? Let's go.
You know what I've been thinking a lot about, and leave it to super nerdy to be thinking about this, but I guess the FTC announced, I think it was in August maybe is when they announced that this rule is going to come in, is that they're banning fake reviews and testimonials online, and it just went into effect. Yeah, and it just went into effect Monday from when we're recording. So it just started, and I heard this and I'm thinking so much of my early entrepreneurial career, like growth hacking, if we think about how you had to growth hack, and that was a big thing. We don't talk enough about growth hacking anymore. I think it's still a good fundamental concept. Growth hacking, a lot of it is based around, I would say fake reviews, but
gray hat approaches to getting eyeballs on your product.
Yeah, how are you going to get people seen? So I will, and maybe this is a bad thing to admit to publicly, but I'm going out for it. Right? Is the one of my companies, we had an extension, a Chrome store extension that we used. It was like a free giveaway that we used as lead gen, top of the funnel lead gen for our product. And we put it out there. And of course, if you just launch something, nobody knows about it. If you build it, they won't come. You got to get the word out. And so what we did is we went, Quora was really big at the time. And so what we were able to do on Quora is we just went and we posted constantly across Quora about this product that we had launched. And when I say we posted about it, I don't mean we posted like this is the best product in the world, because that's not useful. What we do is we just try to insert our product into the conversation. And so it was never ours is the best. It was, basically someone would ask a question that we could and say, what is the best tool for X? And we'd always be like, oh, these are 3 really good tools. And ours was always, number 2 or whatever it is. And so just kind of injecting the conversation. And that Chrome extension we built, I mean, it rocketed up the charts. It had a few 100,000 followers from the first couple months by doing that, right? So that was a core growth hack. Would that be illegal now? Was that illegal back then? I don't know. I look back at it and I think it was maybe a little shady.
That I actually love it, because you're inserting your product into the conversation, which is what we need to do and want to do as entrepreneurs. The part here that I think the FTC is coming after is, when you go to Amazon and you see all these loved it, it's amazing, or these now AI testimonials where you can actually just script something for a bot to say, and now it's all over the place. And you're like, is this a real thing? Is it not? And right now we can kind of tell that it's not a real human who's used this, but it looks like they're trying to get out in front of that now to say, hey, if you do this and you're caught, you're going to pay a fine. Right. And I think that to me is a great thing, and actually kind of surprising that people or that the government is getting out in front of it this quickly. Does that strike you as such?
That's a good point. It also feels a bit finger wavy, but how do you enforce it in the sense that it seems like there's probably just a gajillion examples? I mean, I think I read the fine. Do you remember what the fine is? Hold on, I'm looking through the notes here. It was like $50,000 for violating for each instance. How much money is the government going to be? I mean, because there's got to be millions of these instances, right? You could just make
absolutely. I mean, there's whole industries of this, and that actually brings up a great point, Aaron. Is how do you police that? So how do you differentiate that this review is, from somebody that you paid overseas to leave a review versus not?
Yeah, this is one of my core challenges of regulating the internet and the web anyway is, okay, so the United States government comes in and says, hey, you can't do this, but the United States doesn't own the internet. So does it really change anything? I mean, a lot of the stuff happens outside of the United States. So I guess the company based in the US gets in trouble.
Well, that's so interesting. And I mean, here's another thought too, as we explore this, a lot of our audience here is really focused on audience growth. And there are these pods that you can be a part of. Okay. And so you can pay to be a member usually, or sometimes it's even free. You can be a member of these groups where you all support each other's social media content. And one of the tenets in this FTC ruling is that you can't pay for fake follows and all of this kind of stuff. So I wonder where the actual line is going to be. Like, is that okay? Is like being a part of these pods? I know a lot of social media companies try to cut down on that. They don't want that because they want genuine interaction. They want genuine content on the platform. But where is that line going to be, do you think?
That was, I'm reading in the rule here from the FTC, and this was one that really caught my eye. Misuse of fake social media indicators. The final rule prohibits anyone from selling or buying fake indicators of social media influence, such as followers or views generated by a bot or hijacked account. I think back to the early days of the web, and one thing you had to launch a new Twitter. You go to Fiverr, and you would buy 5,000 followers on Twitter for the account. So it wasn't a starting from zero kind of thing. It was just, it gave it leverage. And by the way, I should point out that also it doesn't work. In retrospect, buying yourself 10,000 followers and then posting and having zero engagement just looks weird. So I would never, I don't recommend anyone do that. That we did 15 years ago, but now not so much.
Okay. So let's talk through this then, because, all right, so there's this new ruling. I'm sure people listening to us some have experience with this, some don't. So in this new world where this is getting tighter and, you have to be, let's call it more authentic, which I actually think is a wonderful thing. Like, how do you authentically grow? Because at the end of the day, those fake followers, they don't generate business for you or anybody else. They more are an indication of, what psychologists call like social proof. Okay. If you're talking like the tenets of influence from Cialdini, okay, which one of my favorite books as it relates to marketing and sales. And one of the key topics he talks about is social proof, which I think in the case of the social media thing, the case of the fake reviews, you're really looking to build social proof for whatever product or service you're selling. So in this case, are there other ways, like as you have been interacting with other entrepreneurs and students at Duke, like what are other ways that you think people can start to get that quick social proof without stepping on the line of this new FTC ruling?
That's a great question. It's a great question because I was going to ask it to you, and because I was like, I don't have a good answer. I wonder what Chris would suggest to our audience. But now I have to come up. Okay, I talk a lot about this with my clients and my students around audience building. It's even if you don't have a bunch of followers and you're posting a TikTok video or Instagram content or whatever it is, it's remembering to use to demonstrate authority, ethos, using your setting, using the imagery. Where are you doing something from, and what are you doing? Like, there's certain things that only you have access to that creates value. And so just going wildly off of what I could possibly get my hands on, but if I did a video in the Cowboys football stadium by myself and I was like a sports guy, well, you would see it. And even if I had 0 followers, but I'm standing in the middle of Cowboys Stadium, you're like, well, clearly this guy must have had some sort of access. Or if I have someone on, if we were smarter people, Chris, maybe we would actually invite guests onto this podcast. We bring in a guest with a big audience, because even if you don't have a big audience, people look at that and go, well, gosh, they were able to get access to that other person with audience. So it's maybe thinking about like what things of value and social proof do you have, and how do you signal those things even without audience?
And I love that. And most of the people that we're going to be talking to, they're going to already have networks. So one great thing to do is just start by asking all your friends and family to go ahead and follow you. And you're not going to get maybe 5,000 followers, but maybe you get 100 or so followers. So I think that's one great opportunity for people who are trying to build that social proof early on. Love what you're saying. And I actually remember a viral video that you had on Instagram where you were teaching your class, like, hey, be up in front of a classroom. You don't even have to have people in there. It just has to look like you are in front of the classroom or on a stage somewhere, because we all have, even in the library in Durham, there's a place where there's a stage, public access. You could easily go there and film yourself speaking on a stage. So that's immediate social proof, because it looks like you're talking to a large audience of people. You can take a still shot, put that as your LinkedIn banner, and you look like a person who is out in front of others communicating, which I think is awesome. That's a great way to do it. And then another way is, I actually like the idea of giving away free speaking at events. So go speak at events, try to get yourself invited to them, even if it's to a group of high school students or college students or whatever you have access to. Like, everybody needs to learn, and they'll probably be interested in what you're doing. You'll find a group of people who need the knowledge that you have. So go there, and then in your presentation, I think this is very important. People forget about it all the time. Put up your QR code or a link to whatever profile you're trying to build out and have people follow you there. And that's a way to quickly get these followers and attention in a way. Like, if you started doing that and you focused on that for the first 1 to 3 months, and you're going to give these different presentations and acquire followers that way, you can actually get several hundred people pretty quickly if you think about it. And in a legitimate way too. People who actually are live, breathing human beings who want to follow you.
Yeah, that's a healthier way of thinking about it for sure. And we have to understand is that you're going to think, oh, a couple hundred, that's not going to feel great because you're going to be seeing these people with a couple 100,000 or a couple million, and you'll be comparing yourself to them. And it's so important not to compare yourself to them when we're using the word quickly, right? And because ultimately, I think, was it the story of I had the president of Mr. Beast's Productions into my class, and something he said that really stuck with me is 6 years ago, Jimmy comes onto the scene, Mr. Beast comes on the scene, and everyone's like just overnight, and Jimmy, amazing, all of a sudden, crazy, all his videos are going wild, and what everyone totally ignores, forgets about, is that he was actually producing videos for 6 years before that nobody was watching. So, and so you see Mr. Beast, and you're like, wow, he's got so many followers, he's so popular, and you don't realize he's been doing this for like 12, 13, 14 years, and you've been doing it for 6 months. And so getting a few hundred followers in 6 months is great, because success takes time. It just takes time.
I love this. Okay, so I think I've got another thought wave coming in. All right. I know. Be careful. Here it comes. So we've got this very interesting aspect. We were talking about building businesses, and what's really interesting is that earlier in the year, we've seen this huge boom in small business growth. All right, so something like 14 million new small business. It was ridiculous.
There's been a big old boom in it.
It was a big old number, right? And as you and I have both been out in the world, we've seen a lot of people who are exiting corporate jobs and they are starting their own businesses. And that's been going on for a while, but there's this term that keeps coming up recently that I think is very interesting. It's this idea of being a fractional X, like a fractional sales leader, a fractional product leader, a fractional CMO, whatever the case may be. And it's giving rise to this thing that I mentioned once or twice, but really want to dig in here, like the fractional economy. Okay. And I'm interested in your thoughts. Like, as we're seeing this shift, do you think this is something that is a bigger trend that's happening? Are we on the front end of that? Are we in the middle of it? Why do you think this is happening? Where do you think we are on this fractional economy idea? And how can our listeners take advantage of that?
Can I ask a question about this fractional economy-ness? I 100% agree it's happening. How much of it is like this weird byproduct of, turns out people don't do a lot during their day job? They can accomplish, it turns out that I haven't spent a lot of time in the corporate world. And also I've always been just a hustler, and the fact that I will pack my day with just things. And so people, I think, often look at me, how do you get so much done? And I'm like, well, I work a lot, but I'm just constantly going. I prioritize efficiency. And I get the sense, I don't know how much of it is, and you've probably got more experience with it, how much of it is just a stereotype, that a lot of people, they don't really do nearly as much in a day at their job as they could if they actually cared or wanted to, but they're getting a paycheck and they're moving on. And so really the truth is, you've got one person who is doing one job and getting paid for that, but realizing I could actually do 4x more than I do working at this company. And so rather than just killing time and letting that one thing expand for one company, I'm going to get paid by this one company and do everything I would have done. And I'm going to get paid by 3 other companies and get everything done. And it turns out I can, maybe not 4x my income, but 2-3x my income by being more efficient.
I love that idea. I think you're right. That is a huge part of what's going on, because if you think about it, when you've got very talented individuals who are involved in product sales, marketing, wherever they might be involved, even fractional CFOs, et cetera, there is an element of strategy that you have to implement, or that you discuss. And once you get that done, it takes a while for everybody else in the company to actually implement that strategy. So it might be, hey, we need to hire these types of people in sales, let's say, and we need to run these types of marketing campaigns. Well, at that point, after you figure out what it is, what needs to be said, what needs to be done, who needs to be hired, etc., well, then the actual thing has to happen. And, you might be checking in on that process or holding those folks accountable as a part of it. But you're right, the time required to do that is, it just takes time for that to happen before you're really needed again in that capacity. So I love the idea of there not being that you're using your time more efficiently, and that's part of what's driving this fractional leadership thing. I think that's right. I think another thing that I personally have heard and seen a lot about and experienced is it's hard being beholden to a boss. And as we all know, there's varying degrees of emotional intelligence within people in general, but especially within leaders at the top. They're busy, they can't give a whole lot of feedback and coaching. And that position, when you're working in a business or entrepreneurship, attracts a wide variety of people and skill sets that it may be a huge pain in the ass to work for somebody. And so in a way, it allows you to diversify your leadership portfolio to a point where, one, you're able to work with other people who may have higher EQ skills, better leadership. And so you're not beholden to just one person who it's like really hard to stand to work for. And I think the second thing is there is a lot of fulfillment in, at least for me again, for working with people on different problems, and it helps keep me fresh, and I think it keeps other people fresh as a part of that. How do you think the leadership component is playing in as a part of this whole story?
That's an interesting part that I started to wonder about as even I deal with more leadership thing and trying to be a better leader in my life. It takes a lot of time to be a great leader. It just does. And what it does is it kind of cuts into your ability to do other things because there's only so many hours in a day. And so I can certainly see a world in which you wind up with maybe a boss where you feel like you're not learning as much, or you're not getting as much value. So it becomes an opportunity to almost scale out and get more chances for value. I can totally see that. The question I'm a little more interested in or more curious about in relation to it all is, so we know this is happening. How does it become action? Like, how does someone maybe sitting there listening to this go, hey, how can I use this trend towards, how do you get a job doing, fractional sales leadership or fractional marketing leadership or whatever it is?
Love that question. Yeah. Are you asking that question?
How?
Love that question. Somebody else answer it, please. Somebody else figure this out.
Yeah.
So here for me, what I started to realize is once I had 3 big wins under my belt in different positions, whether it was VP of sales, sales leadership, revenue leadership, etc., I felt like I had hit a point where I had seen several different problems, successfully had built and managed it, and I could actually put numbers behind it. Meaning I could say, as a part of the ShareFile team, I helped grow that team from 30 people to 300 people. As a part of, the AdWorks team, I helped them go from about 10 million in revenue to 27 million in revenue. And, as the SVP of growth at, Food Smart, I helped them build out their enterprise sales market or go to market and their direct to consumer acquisition approach, where eventually, a couple of years after, they were able to sell their business for, over 200 million, which is awesome, right? So I have these specific numbers. I've seen a lot of things, and I had consciously been building my network over time. And so what I think helped me do that is I have those 3 things. I turn that into a quick pitch. People are like, okay, at least this guy have seen it. He seems to know what he's doing. He's got some success, some numbers behind it. And then it was people raising their hands being like, hey, I need help just with revenue. I don't know where to start. And so what was cool is, could they have hired me as their SVP of growth? Most of the folks I was talking to couldn't hire me as their CRO or SVP of growth based on where they were, because I'd be too expensive for them. So I think that's another thing that's interesting when you're talking about fractional. You don't have to spend the whole amount month over month for this one person. So you're not just putting all of your eggs in one basket and praying and betting on this human and saying, I hope they are going to bring me what I need here. So you're able to get really great talent at a much lower reasonable price, and the incremental value that somebody who has done it a lot and has had a lot of success can provide in 1 hour is oftentimes far more value than maybe somebody who hasn't had as much experience can provide in like 3 to 5 hours.
I love that. So this is the value add right here. It's not like, oh, I'm sitting around and I want to be a fractional person. It's flip it around. It's to the companies, the startups. So okay, we're talking about that. It's kind of small business boom. And I remember this when I was running my companies. It's you're looking for that person and you're trying to find that quote unquote rock star hire who, because it's going to be such a huge part of your cost is to bring on that new person. And so you're like, well, I need someone who can do all these freaking things, because when I got a team of 10 people, like each hire has to do a ton versus if I've got a team of 100 people or 1,000 people. And so it's always so stressful and so difficult to find that person who can do all those things. Right. And so really the fractional movement it's like a superpower for small companies, because now I can go, rather than having to give, because that person, that rock star is going to demand 15 grand a month, and that's a huge cost. They better bring enough value. If I can say, oh, you want 5 grand a month and you're going to create, let's call it 80% of the value. And honestly, it might even be more than 80% of the value, because I think a lot of times is those people who are kind of great at the kind of the leadership and have the knowledge aren't as good at getting their hands dirty. And I said not that they couldn't have, but they're past that stage in their career, and so they maybe aren't as interested in going back to the kind of sitting in Google Analytics and trying to connect all the different dots. Right, that's just not what they want to be doing. And so in a weird way, you're going to get kind of more efficiency by just getting the knowledge out of them and not having to deal with the inefficiency of them sitting in your office for an extra however many hours a week and you paying for that.
Right.
So I think like that's a superpower.
That's spot on. And so here's the thing is, like, a lot of the folks listening are probably thinking about transitioning into some work like what we're talking about, some kind of fractional capacity. They've been thinking about going out on their own. They want to be more challenged. It's a great way to start a business in a safe-ish way, meaning you get it, you understand it, you're doing the job already, and you're just helping more people do the job. Okay, yeah. So it's a great way to, like, entrepreneurship light. It's a great way to dip your toe into the water and figure it out, because it's like one step away from being hired into a full-time job. You're getting hired into multiple jobs. Okay, so in that context, it's kind of interesting. All right, so if you were to start out and saying, hey, I want to make this transition, how would you launch a fractional consultancy like that? What would you do?
Well, the first thing I would probably do is I would go onto something like Fiverr and buy myself like 10,000 followers on X. Apparently, I can't do that anymore.
So. And go into $50,000 of debt after getting slapped by a fine from the FTC. Love it. Great idea. Okay, audience, listen to that right there. You heard it here.
So I think what it is probably incremental. Is if you're already doing the job somewhere, this is I do love the phrase side hustle. I think it's
great.
Maybe overused, but I love it. It's so don't be afraid to take that side hustle. And so okay, but that side hustle isn't necessarily going to just fall in your lap. Probably you got to get out of the mindset of, because you are working for big company X, that you can't do anything professional otherwise. So it's like the separating kind of work and life. Now this is something I'm terrible at. I don't separate work and life, so maybe I'm not the person to listen to here. But it's the idea that, okay, so if you're going to go to your 9 to 5, then you should also be going to startup networking events and meeting people and building kind of the network, you said, so that you start to meet these people, meet these founders who maybe could use your help but can't hire you the full price that you're making at that company, and go get yourself, and have a good conversation with them. And because you're in a position where, let's say you're getting a good salary from your full-time job, be clear with them, like, I can do fractional work for you, and I'm going to give you a great bargain on the cost, because I'm able to support myself over here with my full-time job. But I'm going to give you, 2 hours at night every week, and, another, 5 hours on the weekend. So you're actually going to wind up getting, 10, 15 hours from me for a week. And I'm going to give you a bargain basement deal on that, which is a huge value to that company.
Right.
And also you are starting to dip your toe. And then, so now you've got a foothold in that world. So it gives you a kind of a safer way to leave that bigger job. And so I think that's the key, and why people would be hesitant to do it. It's like the idea of, I'm going to give up my good salary and my health insurance insurance to go to zero, and then I've just got to scrape and claw to find some job. I think that's a bad way to do it. I think what you do is you get yourself 1 or 2 clients on the side. It's going to take work. Like, let's be clear about this. You're not going to magically get another $6,000-$7,000 a month in income and do no extra work. You're going to have to work till 1 a.m. for for a few months. But what it's going to do is, let's say you've now got 2 clients and they're paying you, let's call it 50-60% of your salary. Then now you can afford to quit that job that you had, move on to those 2 clients, and okay, now I'm going to have to go a little lean for a while, but I'm going to spend now the next 2-3 months getting another 2-3 clients, and suddenly I'm going to actually have more of a salary and be able to do everything within this time frame. So I would do a kind of a transitional approach.
That really resonates with me. And I'd say that the way that I started doing some of this consulting work and fractional work, I don't call myself that, but in a lot of ways it's what I do. When I turned in my notice to my other company, they were like, hey, wait, can you just do these couple of projects for me? And I was like, okay. So actually my prior employer became my first customer in my consultancy. And then to your point is, you got to put yourself in play. That is a key thing that most people, just even in life, you need to do, is put yourself in play. And what that means is doing the things that you were talking about. Go out, be a part of these networking meetings, talk to people, post on LinkedIn, Instagram, wherever you might be posting, and give away value in those meetings, because people need to know, hey, how can this person actually help me? And so in order to do that, you have to get engaged in conversations where the people that you can provide value to are asking the questions that you can answer. And as a part of that, you're able to show, hey, this is what I do for a living. This is the insight that I have. And you're able to use that and parlay that into meetings, into potential accounts. So I think putting yourself in play is absolutely crucial for whatever it is that you're doing in life. So I love that. And then what I have found, at least in my practice, is this: you do that, so you get business that way, and then it creates this flywheel. So as you're able to help with people in your network and you start doing work, maybe for a lower price than you normally would or whatever to start out, because you need to get people talking about you and you need to demonstrate that success, then they start referring you to other people. And it becomes this word of mouth thing that helps you acquire more customers.
The thought wave is coming in, but it's going to crash over and push this forward, but in a slightly different direction. It reminds me of, I had a piece of content that went a little mini viral the other day, and it was this excerpt from my class where I was talking with my students about every college student, how to get a job, and they're super obsessing about getting a job. And when they think of getting a job, what they think of is, okay, I'm going to go to some job fairs, I'm going to look for companies that are hiring, that have listings for jobs, and then I'm going to submit a resume, and then I'm going to cross my fingers that I've got enough on that resume that they're going to call me. And what a terrible way to get a job. I call it is outbound job hunting. You're going out and you're hoping, and what happens is you submit that job and there's 500 other people. If it's a good job, there's tons of other people applying, and you're just one in a resume, and you might get lucky, but the odds are not in your favor. And what I encourage my students all the time to do is what I call inbound job hunting, which is, how do you reposition yourself to create meaningful value and demonstrate your ability to create meaningful value so that people see it and go, ooh, I want that value. The story I gave in this clip, which always sticks out in my mind, is I had a student who, he wasn't a particularly great student. He didn't always come to class, he didn't get great grades, things like that. And yet he got an amazing job out of college, because what he did, he was a software developer, and a lot of those times where he was skipping class or whatever, he was working on open source software projects for these big tech companies where he was contributing to them, and he was contributing meaningful value to these free open source projects. And so he built a reputation. And so by the time he's graduating, he had a bunch of these tech companies chasing him because there was no question about whether or not he could provide value. And so what you just described is this importance of demonstrate value. We get this impression that magic falls into your lap, and that's just how kind of career opportunities happen, and it is just not. You have to proactively go after things and show value and show that you can do meaningful things in the world. And when you do that, cool opportunities emerge. And again, you have to understand, it's not everything you do isn't going to result in immediate value. It's about shots on goal, creating value for lots of people, being willing to create value for free. I know people are like, oh, I can't work for free. You know what? Sometimes you gotta, in the early stages when you don't have anything, you show that you can create value. Yeah, it's gonna be free. It's gonna take you time. That's okay. That's how you build a portfolio. That's how you demonstrate you're useful. And that's how you're going to get on that trajectory of kind of great opportunities.
I think that's fantastic, Aaron. Yes, everybody has got to start to realize that it is network, and cold applying, etc., is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Yeah. Go for it.
So jobs, applying to jobs. My first teaching opportunity at Duke. So it's actually all kind of built around this. I was running my tech company, but I had finished my PhD, and I still want to stay connected to an academic community. I really wanted to teach a class. I loved teaching. I still love teaching, and and so the way I did that is I just hung out at Duke a lot. I and not just like sat around random places, but I mentored students. Whenever someone needed to talk, I was showing up to events, and I got to know people. And eventually, an opportunity came along after giving tons of free value for years. There was someone needed a class taught at the last minute, and they're like, hey, you can teach this class, right? And I could, and so I was there. So I was using that principle. But here's the funny thing. So that was for what's called the Thompson Writing Program at Duke, which is the kind of the Writing 101 freshman writing program at Duke. And so my first class I taught at Duke was a freshman writing class, because I'd done that for like 10 years through my degree and stuff. And the funny thing was, I loved it. And so I talked with my wife. I said, you know what, I would love to do this full time. And they do applications every year, and they take on 5 or 6 new fellows to come in to teach. And I was like, and I want to do this. So, and it didn't pay well or anything, but I was like, so I talked to my wife and said, you know what, if this is what you're happy with, this is what you want to do, we'll support it, we'll figure out how to make it work. And so I applied for this job that I already had. And by the way, my class was wildly successful. It was featured in some newspapers and magazines. Like, it was, wow. I had to give a really good class. And I applied to this job. And I imagine, hundreds, thousands of people probably apply to these jobs every year. But I applied, but I'm like, I already am doing the job well. Surely I would be a good candidate. I didn't get past the first round. Like, they never even, like, my application, my resume just got thrown out for a job I already had. I literally already had it. I was doing it well. So that's why you can't just apply and expect magic to happen.
And what's great is, like, that's actually reassuring. Okay. And let me tell you why that's reassuring. Because I think a lot of people believe that it's their fault. There's this like resentment that builds in saying like, hey, they're not paying attention to me, or something's wrong with the process, and they become resentful to the whole process. And I get it. It's easy to become resentful in the hiring process. And what you're highlighting here is the mass amount of resumes and applications. Just imagine being that person and getting all of those resumes and being like, I don't know what to do. I have no idea what to do because I got 500 resumes and I don't have time to go through all those resumes. And so what do? They listen to their network. They're like, hey, do you know anybody who's a rock star that I could put up for this new role? And so people ask their networks because they know it's safe, because somebody was recommended, they're already vetted. And that's one of the big things, is when you start looking at these unknown quantities in a lot of ways, you're like, I don't know, because there's a lot of risk involved with hiring that person. And so part of this networking and what you're talking about being in play, doing the job before you have the job, which I always recommend to the people who work with me, to start doing the job before you have the job so that you're less of a risk. What you're talking about is doing that, and then these happy accidents occur. And even in the case where you like cold apply to a job you already have, you see in the process like, hey, it's not you, it's actually them, and it's a hard problem for anybody to solve. So don't take it personally. Just figure out how to be creative and work the system and hack the system, which is what you're talking about. Be in the area and happy accidents will occur.
Yeah. It's that old cliche, you got to work really hard to get lucky. It's
the cliche is, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
The harder I work. And that's what we're talking about here. It's recognizing that you have to put yourself in the position to get lucky. And this is true in getting great job opportunities. This is true in social media. I'm always telling my clients in social media, well, number one is post a lot, because if you don't post a lot, there's zero chance you're going to get a successful post. It's true in entrepreneurship. It's chances are that first company you launch isn't going to do it, but you launch 4, 5, 6, you're going to start to learn things. You're going to have more opportunities. You're going to hit timing right. Those kind of things. It's true. And here's the thing. If we need example of this. It's true in sports. I know you're not much of a sports guy, Chris, but there's a reading that the most important metric in basically every sport is, it's funny, shots on goal, or whatever whatever the equivalent is. The
Sure.
soccer shots on goal, field
Sure.
goal attempts, basketball, red zone. Like, it basically is saying like the
Sure.
team that has the most opportunities statistically is more likely to win. Not always, right? You have to understand it's not saying 100% if you have more shots on goal you're going to win, but saying statistically more shots on goal is going to give you more opportunities to win. And that's just how you have to learn to approach life.
That's absolutely right, Aaron. That's absolutely right. And you're making me think of something here that I want to give away one of my best partnership tips. Okay. So a lot of people that build partnerships, they land a partnership and then they're waiting for it to create value, and it creates no value. They did all this work. They got all the contract side. No value is being created. Here's what you do. You take somebody at your company and you sit them in the building where that new partnership is. I just actually had a client do this the other day. Okay. They signed this huge partnership with a big software company, and they wanted to make sure that this thing worked. And so what I counseled them to do, sit a person in that building every week if you can, every day if you can, from the beginning of the partnership, and just sit them at a desk, and you'll get meetings, etc. The person who's leading the partnership will introduce you to people who are passing by. All of these happy accidents start to happen. So when he did this, he was sitting there and he had a meeting that he was there for with a potential customer that they had brought to him. And it turns out he does that meeting, and then 3 or 4 other reps see him doing this and come up and say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And he's like, "Oh, well, we got this partnership, and they were interested in what we were selling, et cetera." And they're like, "Oh, well, I've got 3 customers that I think would be good for this." And so just physically being there, putting yourself in play, these happy accidents occur where people are seeing you. And these things can't happen when you're at your own company, or when you're at home, or when you're doing things over Zoom. You don't get that magic to happen. So if you build a big partnership and you want it to work, sit somebody in the building to make sure that they are putting themselves in play and can maximize happy accident.
I love it. Out of sight, out of mind. You got to make sure you stay in front of people. That feels like I feel like we've created value, Chris. If you thought that was valuable, then go leave us a good review and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, which none of you are yet, because this is only number 2. Did I miss anything, Chris?
That's it. I just want to thank the audience for joining ThoughtWave, where we discuss tips, tricks, and hacks for audience builders, entrepreneurs, and people who just want to do shit.
All right, let's go get some shit done.
See you out there. Bye.